Hey, welcome back to the VTCLA Podcast. This is episode 12, and we have the distinct pleasure today of talking to Michael Martin, the executive director of the Roland Foundation, and who has a long history of curriculum work as a curriculum director, which he will also talk a little bit about. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Start, please, just by talking about that journey that's landed you in the position you're currently in now.
Sure. So, Jeff, as you know, I grew up in Vermont and longtime classroom teacher. Spent a lot of my career at CVU, where we were colleagues. And let me see. Oh, I guess I should go back. I went to college in Vermont too. So I went to UVM, studied literature. Spent my junior year in Nice on the French Riviera, which was a very, very good year. And then I liked it so much, I did Middlebury language schools, which brought me to Paris, which is where I met my wife, Magali, and who you know. And so something about me is we raised two sons, bilingual. Now they live in Montreal, not too far away. And I've spent my career, I've been really fortunate to have a really rewarding career in education, in Vermont education. As a classroom teacher for a long time, then as a curriculum director, first in Montpelier, and then in South Burlington. And now I'm in my fourth year serving as the executive director of the Roland Foundation. And I was also fortunate enough when I was still teaching with you at CVU to garner a Roland Fellowship in the first year of the foundation, which was back in 2009. And then the director at the time asked me to stay on and help out with new fellows coming on. So I worked at part-time as a senior associate. And so that's brought me into a lot of Vermont schools around the state. It's been very enriching, and I've learned a lot through that process. So it's been fun.
Yeah, thank you. And a small little footnote, you taught my daughters as well.
Full disclosure.
Full disclosure, exactly. So let's talk about the foundation itself, how it works, and really how you see it fitting into the landscape of Vermont education.
Sure. So our mission is to invest in Vermont teachers to positively change the culture and climate of schools. And each year, I'm really proud of the fact that each year we ask teachers for their ideas. And so there's something really unique about that approach. To go straight to the people who are, in the trenches, as we say. And so every year we put out an open call for proposals. We don't say the answer to public education is nature-based education or UDL, it's a truly open call for proposals every year, asking teachers for their great ideas for how to improve their schools. I also really am proud of this focus on culture and climate, because without that, I think that's maybe the most important work, right? We can get so fixated on test scores and outcomes and measurement that we can forget the human dimensions of education. So that community building and cultural aspects of school, I think, are really important. So I'm glad that the foundation has that focus on school improvement. The proposal, something that's really important to know about our approach is that our proposals from teachers require a really enthusiastic letter of support from the principals. So it's predicated on a really solid partnership with their principal. We also ask now for superintendents to approve the proposal to make sure that it's in line with broader goals for the district. But something really important is at the same time that we're validating teachers with great ideas and elevating their voices and bringing them into this network of other innovative teachers, it's really important for these leaders to be committed to shared leadership. And so every Roland Fellow has a collaborative work group, formerly known as a steering committee, to really power the work. And so the idea is that it's really owned by their colleagues and the school community, and it's not a solo act. So that's something that's also really important. And the last thing I'll say about our approach is that something that we've really developed out of necessity over the years is a really strong 2-year cohort cycle. So, we're not the only, you can think of Snelling or various graduate programs that have really good cohort structures. Ours is really specific, really focuses on, again, shared leadership, sharing ideas across school districts, and then going really deep in collaborative practices. So thinking, how we do the work matters just as much as the work itself. So that 2-year cohort cycle, we have senior associates, Jeannie Phillips and Jean Berthium, who lead those meetings with Roland Fellows. And so it's a really cool model because you have Roland Fellows coming together from across districts, sharing problems of practice and learning across our little valleys in Vermont. So so that's also something that's that really has grown over time.
Yeah, you mentioned something that I was thinking about as I was looking at your theory of action. It would be really easy in a circumstance like this for the fellows to end up being pretty isolated. And you've been really intentional about making sure that there's sort of this ripple effect through your theory of action that ensures some level of sustainability and a more far-reaching impact. Can you talk about what that theory of action is and what is some of that intentionality?
Yeah, sure, Jeff. So yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. As you know, sometimes teaching, or too often, teaching can be too much of a solitary endeavor. So, we've got faculty meetings, we've got department meetings, we've got maybe professional learning groups or PLCs where we come together sometimes, but too much time, really, it's kind of close the door, go into your classroom, do your thing. And so we're really consciously trying to deprivatize practice in a really intentional way. Because if you go back to that Hattie research, it's collective teacher efficacy. It's not solo teacher efficacy, right? So it makes it different for kids when teachers believe that by working together with shared purpose in a school community, they can really make a difference. They can move the needle for our students. And so we're really committed to that approach. So you mentioned this ripple effect. At it's almost like a fractal, where like at the first level, right, we're investing in a teacher with a great idea that wants to move into kind of like a teacher on special assignment role for a 2-year commitment to lead a school improvement project. And then that, like I said, that teacher now is going to have a collaborative work group of colleagues to lead that site-based project. So at a specific school in Vermont. And then that Roland Fellow is also going to plug into this cohort with Roland Fellows from that same year from other schools. So they're going to be learning across school districts. And now that we're up to about 106, actually, Roland Fellows around the state, there's this broader network. So part of my work is also to bring those people together and also to connect fellows across this loose network of innovative educators across the state. And so the hope is that, we've been calling it the Roland Ripple, right? Like this, you start with this teacher leader and their collaborative work group, that site-based project. You're part of a broader cohort of Roland Fellows any given year. And then there's this growing network of Roland Fellows, over 100 now around the state, that hopefully together, we can make a difference for Vermont schools. So that's kind of the rippling out of change that we hope to see.
Yeah, thank you. So lots of the work done by Roland Fellows centers on a progressive mindset. You talked about climate culture, but it's also, from my view anyway, about rethinking, redesigning learning experiences for students. And we know that there's a lot of structures that are working against some of this progress, right? And this progressive mindset. Just to name a few, the industrial model that's based on content-driven experiences and content requirements, and teacher contracts, the mindset around scheduling and what it requires to prepare kids for college. All of these are factors that we're trying to mitigate while really finding what are the best authentic learning experiences. So what are some of the experiences you've seen through this Roland experience that have made some headway into those headwinds. And what do you have to say about some of the things I laid out there in terms of the challenges?
Yeah, I agree. I think this, you and I aren't the first people to observe this. There are a lot of mental models, right, that come with school, and a lot of assumptions that go unexamined. And sometimes that's rows of desks in a straight line with somebody talking at the front of the room. Like that can just be assumed, like that can just be a default setting. Sometimes it's the idea that you have to stay, in a building all day long for it to be school, as opposed to the school being sort of like a hub for experiential learning. There's also this idea of the school being a closed system, which obviously it's not, right? We bring the challenges and conflicts of our society show up in school, whether it's social media, whether it's politics, whether it's cultural issues. Socioeconomic challenges for sure show up in school. So I guess that would be another mental model, right? Like the idea of a closed system, when actually schools are very much part of the fabric of their local community. So so I'm really interested, as you are, in rethinking deeper learning approaches. Our state has a long tradition of progressive education going back to John Dewey, but not only. And we've been at the forefront with proficiency-based learning, with a renewed emphasis on transferable skills to really be the connective tissue across years of school and across discipline areas. So I think some of these things, in addition to restorative practice, nature-based approaches, these are all really important disruptors of the legacy system. I also, since you brought up, like the importance of grading and assessment and measuring and all that, I think of Tom Guskey's book, On Your Mark, where he talks about like how much time are you going to spend developing talent and how much time are you going to spend selecting talent through your grading and assessment processes. And so I'm committed to that democratic approach of serving all students and trying to develop everyone's talent instead of spending most of our time ranking and sorting students, right? And so if we were able to get some distance on some of these legacy practices, then it kind of opens up some cool stuff. And at a time when we saw, coming through the pandemic, that when school was, in a kid's bedroom and a screen, it wasn't that great. And so I think, if we were to rethink what does it mean to be in vibrant in-person learning communities, what if we designed for that instead of these buildings, that honestly, the architects of most of our schools, right, also designed prisons. So you got like these cinder block buildings with choke points to control the movement of people. And actually most places to prevent the movement of people when we know our bodies need to move, right? So to give you, I feel like I haven't done a good job answering your question, Jeff. So I can't give shout outs to all the awesome Roland fellowships that have taken place since 2009, but some of the ones, just to go back to your question, the ones that are really popping for me right now are ones that really either foster community within the school or really develop strong ties to the wider community. And so you can think of crafts in Woodstock, which is, let me see if I know this, climate resilience through agriculture. I had to peek, forestry and tech innovation. So it's a pretty strong acronym. Dare to be Me at Hazen Union, which is very nature-based. It's very much about identity development within community and building strong community with students. In North Country, there's a music teacher who's bringing musicians into the classroom to kind of break down that wall of adults and young people. In Northfield, Middle High, there's some really great restorative practices work going on that's really that tier one universal approach to change culture of the school, instead of, the first time you're in a circle is when you're in trouble. It's probably not the way we should do restorative practices. There's also some great advisory work at Edmonds Middle School here in Burlington, where my kids went to school, and they have a monthly Switch It Up Day. So the Roland Fellow at that school has really been trying to kind of get the advisory program to the next level, so that then students every month they're going out in the community, making these really meaningful connections to the community through some experiential learning opportunities. So it's the kind of thing that, that we've seen in pockets around the state. And so I have a really fun job because, we're trying to support, to elevate the things that are working and to fuel that innovation and bring people together. So I have a fun job.
Yeah, speaking of that, so those are some fascinating examples, and we know that the history is around local control, and Vermont feels so isolating in many ways for a lot of reasons. But one of those reasons is that everybody's got their own school board and their own governance system, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so you're in this position where you're seeing these innovative pockets, and yet we have such a hard time bringing those to scale and then making those experiences more ubiquitous, right? So could you talk just a little bit about the progress you've made in that regard, and then what other kind of systemic structures could be built to do that better?
Yeah, I think, a couple of ways to, it's a great question. One thing I think about when you ask a question like that is, we're in this moment of great uncertainty, right? We have a president-elect who's talking about abolishing the Department of Education. We have, I believe, still an interim Secretary of Education in our own state who wasn't warmly welcomed in, and maybe is still finding her position and establishing herself. There's in our state also, just to be really candid and speak plainly, there's some questions since we went from a commissioner model to a Secretary of Education, which is a cabinet position. There's some questions around the role of the State Board of Education. And so what I'm saying is, in a moment of great change and some instability, it's reassuring to me to think about what we can do on the ground. And you and I both have had really rewarding careers in Vermont education. And there's something really special about that. There's something really annoying sometimes about the local control thing, where everybody has to reinvent the wheel over and over again. But there's also something beautiful about how close-knit sort of the Vermont education community is, and how proud parents remain of their schools in this state, and how our schools are really really at the heart of our small communities. So that's, when you think about your locus of control, the things we can't control in the world, to think about what we can. And that, I guess that brings me to my next thing, which is the thing that we keep learning and relearning is to be better collaborators. And I know it's like, duh, but really we're not taught that in school necessarily. You get the group project every once in a while. You get the cooperative learning roles assigned to you every once in a while. But we are acculturated to really operate in an individualistic way, oftentimes in a pretty competitive environment. And so I think a lot of our work has really been about, to really do deep, meaningful work, we have to figure out new ways of working. And so, like, a really small example of this, Jeff, is we use multi-track agendas in our cohort work, and we try to have those be used in schools. Now, so basically you have like the activity, and on the side you have the purpose. Now, this is like a really small example, but the idea is that no matter what you're doing at the meeting, there's always a purpose that's explicit, that's transparent. And, if we're spending more time on this, then at least we're being transparent about why. And so this idea again about the way we do the work matters as much as the work is something I've been thinking a lot about. Like maybe that will be an even more enduring legacy at Northfield than the restorative practices or the topic of a Roland Fellowship, the way that Roland Fellows can engage with their colleagues and maybe work differently with each other and undo some of this individualism and go it alone kind of mentality. That's the kind of thing that I think definitely our society could use more of right now, but our school communities as well. So that's something I've been really trying to promote, and we've been really trying to lean into that as an organization.
Yeah, thanks. That's really it's an interesting point about the way schools are built to reinforce individualism and then to prepare them for a workplace that requires such deep collaboration. Yeah, it's fraught with irony for sure.
For sure.
So you talked a little bit about this, but from your perspective and lots of different experiences in education, what do you see as sort of the primary challenges in this very unique time? And you laid out some of the context already, but what do you see as some of the biggest challenges and how we might go about tackling some of them?
Yeah, I think definitely we've brought up a couple of them, right? Whether it's the industrial model of education, the fractious nature of our society right now,
and the budgetary stress
sure.
we're under for sure. Public education in Vermont for the first time in quite some time, I think, is being regarded publicly quite differently than it has been for years due to some of these cost constraining issues.
I totally agree. And I think that the way we're going to come through that, Jeff, is these incredible pressures, economic pressures on public schools. I think something, maybe our greatest challenge in light of all that is the kind of the creeping perception of school as just another commodity, as school as just another product. And so the more this kind of privatization, school choice, a friend of mine used to say, school choice is when the parents choose the school, not when the school chooses the parents or the family, right? And so we're seeing kind of our commitment as a country to fair and appropriate public education really be deeply questioned. And where it's not really a left-right political thing is this consumer mentality around, like, I want to get my kid into the best school. And so I think that's really dangerous. I think that's really not going to serve us well if we stop thinking of schools, democratic mission, the place where we make citizens, the place where we bring people together across the community. Going back to CVU too, like, it was the place where Bill Mayers taught like fly fishing classes and, bee stuff, and I taught like after hours, beginner guitar, that extended day where we're bringing community members into the school. That's not uncommon in Vermont, right? Where the school is where you vote. It's where they're like senior, activities. It's where there's pre-K stuff going on. So, when we're thinking about schools as the heart of our community and not just another option to choose from or another commodity or product, that's now we're talking about like investing in the public good. And that's really been eroded, I think, over the course of my lifetime, where, public libraries, public parks, public schools are questioned, and these market forces permeate the way we even think about school budgets and the way we think about what success is. So I'm really pleased with, in my role with the Roland Foundation, to be bringing resources into schools at a time when they're under so much pressure and when it's so easy for us to, again, recoil, and I'm just going to put my head down and go in my classroom. And we know that's not the best way to take care of each other.
Yeah, thank you. So as we start closing out, I want you to talk a little bit about what that process looks like if I'm interested in becoming a Roland Fellow, or if I want to sort of tap one of my colleagues on the shoulder.
Great. I love both of those ideas, Jeff. So, yeah, if you're watching this and you're a curriculum director, please, I'm sure you have some ideas about what would be great in your school. I'm sure you have some teachers that you work with who would make awesome Roland Fellows. So sometimes it's that little bit of encouragement that helps people take that step to do an application. Our application's pretty straightforward. It asks for a description of the proposal. You can attach some video. We've had some really cool applications where people interview students about the thing that they want to propose, just with their phone, not like a produced slick video or anything. And then there are 3 different letters. So if you're a procrastinator, it's good to know that, that you need to collect the letters. So that takes a minute. So one from the principal, which is really important and required, and then one from a colleague or a student, and then one just like a personal reference, somebody you can speak to who you are as a human. And then really it's just the proposal. We're looking for proposals that have a school-wide impact, that's a systemic approach, and it's not like a standalone program or alternative thing. We don't want to have more sort of add-ons. We want to change the system. So we're looking for something that's going to impact, that will benefit all students as much as possible. And again, that system-wide change. And then it's really important as much as possible to be able to speak to, in a proposal, how you're going to do the work. So like, is there a committee that you could plug into? Do you have ideas about bringing in community members from the wider community? What's your ideas for sharing out to your faculty to get their ideas and some kind of feedback cycle? So those process notes are really important too in a strong proposal. So our deadline is at the end of the year, but we start accepting applications from November 1st on. So we're accepting 2025 Roland Fellowship applications right now. And if folks have any questions, they should go to the website. If they just click on the fellowship tab, they'll see apply, and they can see get the application form, but also info@therolandfoundation.org. They can contact us, and then we'll help out with any questions that come up. And we also make available our senior associates I mentioned earlier, who will schedule, like if you have a rough draft of a proposal, you want a thought partner, they're wonderful, and they'll schedule a Zoom call and like support teachers. So we want to help people do this. We don't want it to be a daunting task. We want it to be an interesting and kind of fun endeavor.
Yeah, thank you for that information, and good luck with the next round of fellow applications. We haven't even mentioned the phenomenal conference that Roland sponsors every year as well. Great opportunity for that collective collaboration that you were talking about. And what I've really liked is it really highlights the work being done. And what I've been really buoyed by is how well we share our practices with one another, and how thirsty we are for those opportunities. And sure. Roland has done a great job of being one of the many facilitators for that. So we always close out traditionally with you having a chance to do a shout out to someone, or it could be a little bit of a plural, who's just had a profound impact on your educational journey.
Thanks. That would be a lot of people. A lot of them, Jeff, because of our time together. But I give this a little thought, and I really want to give a shout out to the Act One working group. And so some of the people, the membership changed over the past few years, but Act One of 2019 found that there was systemic racism in Vermont schools that needed to be addressed. And so it was a mandate from the legislature to review our learning standards for students, and then also to develop and adopt, if necessary, social justice and ethnic studies standards. And this group did both in a couple of years. And so the Vermont IRIS standards that you're familiar with, Jeff, are a powerful cross-curricular document to move us forward in the area of more culturally responsive teaching. But also the state board earlier this year adopted new educational quality standards that include instructional strategies such as, universally designed learning and restorative practices. And so the work of this group is amazing when you think about it. And so I want to give a shout out to the co-chairs, Amanda Lucia Garces and Mark Hage. Also people like Natasha Eckert, Mia Schultz, Susanna Davis, Vera Sheehan, Diego Sora, Heather Lynn, Cynthia Reyes, Mike McRae, Chelsea Myers, Barbara Martin. And there are other people that were really important contributors as well who didn't stay on for the entire 3-4 years adventure. But it's the most diverse group of educational leaders I've worked with. And I'm really humbled to have been part of that work as the VTCLA rep on that group. So I'm really excited for now people like you and Gwen Carmoli and other colleagues who are really bringing that work out into the field. And those would be the people I want to give a shout out to. Really grateful for them.
Thank you. And several of those people you just mentioned are future podcast interviewees.
Perfect.
To dig into some of that work even deeper. Thank you. Mike, it's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed the conversation. And I deeply appreciate the work that the foundation has done since its inception when you were one of its original fellows. So thanks again for all the work you're doing and for the work that you did on behalf of VTCLA on the Act One committee as well. That you perfectly described the impact that group has had, and in many ways, the impact is still in its infancy in terms of what's next. So
for sure.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. It was a pleasure. See you soon.
See ya.